So shalom, everyone. Today, on a day like today, where we're hearing from people who have literally been held captive, Matir Asurim, God, you release the bound, takes on a very potent meaning for all our freedoms, that we are B'nai Chorin, born free, have a birthright of freedom, for all the anticipation of the Seder and the celebration of our traditions and our rights of religious freedom in this country. So much to be grateful for. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lasech v'hina lavchin ben yom uven layla. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani b'tzalmo. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani bat chorin. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam pokei hachivim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam malbish haromim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam matir asurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zokef kefufim.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam rokah haaretz al hamayim.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam sha'asa li kol tzorki.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamechim mitzadei gaver.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam mozei Israel bigvura.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam motei Israel b'tifara.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam anoten layaif koach.
Amen.
May we this day and every day find grace, love, and compassion in your eyes and in the eyes who look upon us. Grant us a full measure of loving kindness. Praised are you, Adonai, who bestows loving kindness upon the people Israel. Welcome, welcome. A psalm for Shabbat. Shabbat is a day of justice and freedom, a time when all people can have a day of rest. When we first left Egypt and slavery so many thousands of years ago as a people, the original request was not for total liberation. The original request was, let us go for a 7-day period to worship our God so that they could have a Shabbos. One Shabbos was precious enough. Mizmor, mizmor, mizmor shir. Mizmor shir liyom hashabbat. Mizmor, mizmor, mizmor shir. Mizmor shir liyom hashabbat. Mizmor shir, mizmor shir liyom hashabbat. Mizmor shir, mizmor shir leyom hashabbat. In this psalm, we learn that the wicked can spring up like grass, but they will be trampled and doomed. There's no question there are traffickers in this world. There are evil people bent on doing evil. But as much as they can seem to spring up and grow anywhere, they can be easily trampled and uprooted. Grass doesn't have deep roots, and neither does evil. It just takes the will of good people to uproot it. And the righteous will flourish like a palm tree and grow mighty like a cedar in Lebanon, with deep roots, unmoving, slow to grow, but lasting. We're going to turn now to the end of the Ashrei. Tzadik Adonai b'chol derachav, v'chasid b'chol masav, karov Adonai l'chol korav, l'chol asher yikrehu v'emet, ritzon yireav yaseh, v'et shavatam yishma v'yoshien, shomer Adonai et kol avav, v'et kol rashayim yashmid, tilat Adonai daber pi, vivarech kol basar Shem Kodsho Le'olam Va'ed, V'anachnu Nevarech Ya, Me'ata v'ad olam. Hallelujah. V'anachnu Nevarech Ya, Me'ata v'ad olam. Me'ata v'ad olam. Me'ata v'ad olam. Hallelujah. 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 We praise God for all the gifts that we enjoy, including the gift of breath and life itself. That is the last of the 150 Psalms. Every breath, every living being is a praise to God. Every breath, every living being is precious. Hallelujah, hallelujah, Vitzil Tzilei Shama. Hallelujah, hallelujah, Vitzil Tzilei Teruah. Kolan Shama Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Kolan Shama Hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah. We continue now with our call to prayer, Baruch Hu. It's our custom to bow twice in this prayer. And we know from the story of Purim and the book of Esther that Jews don't bow down to human beings, but we do bow down to God. Yai da 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 da. Yai da 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 da. Yai da 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 da. Da 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 da. Ya da 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 da. Yai da 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 da. Yai da 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 da. Ya da 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 da. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach Baruch Adonai HaMevorach HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed. HaMevorach HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed. I want to greet everyone with a good morning. We have some very special guests with us, Evan and Lisa Robbins, Michael and Salome, and we'll be hearing from them as our Torah discussion and learning. There's all kinds of Torah in this world. There's the Torah that we'll be reading, our traditional 5 books of Moses reading. And there's the Torah, the instruction, the divine message of life as it is lived. And each of us, the mystics say, is a walking Torah scroll with a lot to teach. And it's also a process even to read your own scroll. I'm going to continue now with the Shema in a moment. And the Shema is a prayer that is all about really listening, hearing in a deep way. The word Shema doesn't just mean to hear, but to understand, and then to put into action, to heed. This week's Torah portion has in it a series of instructions about sacrifices, which might sound to us like something very antiquated, because we don't any longer obviously bring animal sacrifices, yet we still learn about these and we study them in depth because they have a lasting spiritual message. So one message that applies to the Shema. In this Torah portion, we learn about the Korban Shalomim, the thanksgiving offerings, the offerings of gratitude and wholeness. Sometimes they're translated as offerings of well-being or whole being offerings. It comes from the word shalom or peace. When you have an inner sense of peace, a sense of wellness, ma shlomcha, how are you? I'm well, my peace, my wholeness is good. Then you bring this kind of sacrifice. But there is a subset to the sacrifice that is called a korban todah. Todah is a word we know from modern Hebrew. It just means thank you. Korban todah applies in 4 specific times. It applies if you have crossed a great sea and come out to the other side safely. It applies if you have crossed a great desert and come to the other side safely. It applies if you've been through a serious illness and come out the other side safely. And lastly, it applies if you have ever been held captive or enslaved and come out the other side safely. Now, all 4 of these things are celebrated on Passover, because on Passover, we crossed a sea, the Sea of Reeds that parted for us. We crossed a desert to get to the promised land and to arrive first at Mount Sinai. We were terribly ill and sick from the tortures and the oppressions of slavery, sick at heart and sick in body. Coming to Mount Sinai, the tradition says we were all healed. And that's why we named hospitals Mount Sinai and Cedar Sinai. These are places of healing. And lastly, of course, most importantly, for Passover, we went from slavery to freedom. So the Korban Todah is exactly what we went through at freedom, at Passover time, in the 13th century BCE for our people. And we're going to be hearing today from 2 people who have reason to offer a Korban Todah today. They have reason to say thank you and to celebrate that through their own powers and through the help of some very special people and God, they can say that they emerged from captivity to freedom. So sometimes we go through the Torah portion and we just say, oh yeah, this part is meaningful to me. That part, yeah, that's antiquated. That doesn't apply today. We don't do the sacrifices. And we just breeze on by without really listening to what the Torah is telling us. Shema Yisrael means taking every sacred word of the Torah that is in the scroll and of the Torah that is in us and really heeding it and mining those words for their full meaning so that we can live better, more full, holier lives. And so that we never miss a Korban Todah. We never miss the opportunity to give a sacrifice for thanksgiving and well-being, and for all the other occasions that may come. We will pray the Shema. May we all listen better to the holy words of our tradition, the words found in the Bible, and the words of people who testify to their experience, whether they be friends or family members, or the very special young people we will hear from today. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavecha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'veitecha u'v'lechtecha v'derech uv'shachbecha uv'kumecha u'kshatam leot al yadecha v'hayu l'totafot b'neinecha וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. We continue with our own private prayers to the bottom of the page. למען ירבו ימיכם וימי בניכם על האדמה אשר נשבע אדוני לאבותיכם לתת להם כימי השמיים על הארץ. We read together at the top of the page, the top paragraph, and if you have tzitzit fringes on your talit, then please, if you're wearing a talit this morning, kiss the fringes each time we say that key word in the English. Adonai said to Moses, instruct the people Israel that in every generation they shall put tzitzit on the corners of their garments and bind a thread of blue to the tzitzit, the fringe on each corner. Look upon these tzitzit, and you will be reminded of all the mitzvot of Adonai and fulfill them, and not be seduced by your heart, nor led astray by your eyes. Then you will remember and observe all my mitzvot, my commandments, and be holy before your God. I am Adonai, your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage, to be your God. I, Adonai, am your God, who is truth. Adonai Elohechem Emet. We remember crossing the Red Sea, that difficult, frightening, miraculous, unforgettable transition from slavery to freedom. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedai b'kodesh, no tehilot hoseh b'eleh, shira chadasha shibchu geulim, l'shimcha al sefat hayam, yachad kulam hodu, v'himlichu ve'amru, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. Tzur Yisrael, kuma be'ezrat Yisrael, ufdechnu mecha Yudah be'Yisrael. Arise, God, defend your people, redeem them from slavery. Baruch atah Adonai, Gal Yisrael. The Amida prayer, I'm going to be chanting in the Hebrew. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Ha'gibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim v'Konei HaKol, v'Zocher Chasdei Avot, U'Mevig Livnei Bneihem, L'man Shemo B'Yahava, Melech Ozer Foked Moshiach U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham U'Foked Sarah, Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, V'Chayei Meitim Atah Rav Lehoshia, Mashiv Ruach Morid Agah Hashem, Mechakel Chaim Bechesed, Mechaye Meitim Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim V'Rofer Cholim, Umatir Asurim, you free those who have been in chains. Umekayem emunato lishenei afar, amichamocha bal kivurot, umido melech Melech Memit Umechayeh Umatzmiach Yeshua. Who is like you, God, who redeems us all? Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayeh Hametim. Nekadesh et shimcha b'olam, kishem shemakdishim oto b'shmei marom. Kakatu bayad neviacha, v'karazel zeh b'yamar. Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzivot, Melech Haaretz Kivodo. Holy, holy, holy is Adonai of hosts. The whole earth is filled with God's glory. Ahaz b'kol Rosh Gadol, Adir v'chazak mashmim kol minasim limat serafim, liumatam baruch yomeru, baruch kevod Adonai mimkomo. Mimkomcha malkeinu tofia, v'timlocha aleinu mechakim anachnu lach. We are waiting for your complete dominion and salvation, God. Matai timloch b'tzion. When will you rule fully over Zion and the world? B'karo b'yameinu le'olam va'ed tishkon. Let it be soon and speedily in our days. Titgadal v'titkadash b'toch Yerushalayim yircha. L'dor v'dor l'netzach netzachim. V'eineinu tirena malchutecha k'adamur b'shirei uzecha. We have received this promise. Yimloch Adonai le'olam, Elohayich Tzion, l'dor v'dor, hallelujah. God will reign over the world and always, from generation to generation. Praise the Lord. L'dor v'dor nagid godecha, u'lenetzach netzachim kedushatcha nakdish. V'shivchacha u'enu mipinu le'yomosh le'olam va'ed. Ki el melech gadol v'kadosh ata, baruch atah Adonai ha'el ha'kadosh. We take time now for quiet meditation and contemplation. The summary of the Amida is on the screen before you. You can pray the words in your heart. You can pray the Hebrew or the English that you may have in a Siddur. This is a good time with our guests here and with Passover almost upon us on Shabbat Hagadol, the great Sabbath that announces our impending freedom, to pray about and for freedom. We'll take a few moments of silence and then come back together. Hu yaseh shalom aleichem kol Yisrael ve'imru amen. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen. In honor of our guests and in honor of this special Shabbat that announces the holiday of Passover, our festival of freedom, we are going to spend half an hour or so now for our Torah discussion, and it's going to be led by Evan Robbins. Let me just introduce Evan, who will introduce his students and really his children. There is a tradition that says if you've taught a person anything in this lifetime, any holy lesson worthy of the name Torah, then you are their parent. And by that definition, Evan and Lisa, according to the Talmud, are parents by so many other definitions too, to Michael and Salome. Evan and Lisa are the co-founders of Breaking the Chain Through Education. I got to know them because of their exemplary work in freeing slaves. The story that I know of Evan, today's really about Michael and Salome's story, but I will share this much, that one day when one of his daughters was 6 years old, he read an article in the New York Times, as one can do so often, about child slaves. And he just could not turn the page. And from that time on till this, he has slowly figured out, initially having no clue how to help, he has figured out astonishing capacity for finding out where there are enslaved or recently liberated children in Ghana, building an infrastructure for them, not just education, but healthcare and lifelong support, and shepherding them from slavery to freedom. So thank you, Evan and Lisa, for all you do, and thank you for being here. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hey, thank you. We have Salome and Michael here with me. We also have Emmanuel there too, who's my head field agent. And maybe Emmanuel will stick his head in and say hello. I have been with Michael and Salome proudly as my children since 2012. And Lisa and I love them so much, and they're so proud of what they've done. So Salome, let's just go back to, tell me about your family, your parents, how many siblings you have.
We are 3 in Nama and we are all ladies.
Tell me about your siblings. You have older or younger siblings?
Our first sibling, my first sibling is in the university. She's being supported by one of my aunties. And my second sibling, she's in Accra doing her own handiwork.
What were the circumstances that led to your trafficking? Why did your parents, or what happened that led to you be trafficked?
For my parents, I don't really know. I learned they are alive, but I don't really know where they are. And I could remember I stayed with my grandma.
Right.
So it was my grandma who sent me to a man and a woman at the lakeside to stay with them due to the hardship.
So I remember visiting you and your cousin at your grandmother's house all the time, Joseph. So tell me, what did you do? Where were you sent? Were you in Abati Toina? What village were you in when you were sent away? And what kind of work did you do when you were trafficked?
Daddy, I was sent to a village called Okwalama. Yeah, around Krachi, that side. Yeah. So I was living with a woman and the husband over there. And the woman, she prepares porridge and the husband is a fisherman. So early in the morning, I have to wake up. Then I do all the house chores. Then after that, if the woman prepares the porridge, she has to tie it for me to go and roam and sell it in the nearby communities and where we stay. So in fact, Daddy, if I go and roam and the porridge hasn't finished, come to the house, the insults, the beatings, and sometimes I will be denied food for the whole day because the porridge hasn't finished. And after the man too is back from the fishing, the same thing. I have to go to the riverside, carry the fish to the house. I have to smoke the fish. After that, I have to go to the bush. I fetch firewood. Daddy, a lot. I have to cook for the fishermen.
So it was very hard. And they were very abusive. Just for the people here, she was sent near Keti Karachi from the home where she's from. That's probably a 1 or 2 day trip. It's very far with the transportation. I'm sure it was 2 days to get there. So it was not something you could easily return home. Eventually you were rescued by IOM, correct?
Yes, please.
And they returned you to your grandmother's house, correct?
Yes, please, Daddy.
So what was it like for you to go back to your grandma after knowing that she had trafficked you?
From the beginning, my grandma was happy I was trafficked. But later when I came to her, still, IOM was taking care of me anyway. Sometimes they used to bring the food and the money, my grandmother wouldn't give it to me. I have to go to the school with empty stomach, come to the house, you eat without fish. That it was a lot.
I remember. I mean, the IOM, we were giving money to IOM, which is how they were supporting you. And I remember going there and not being very happy with the care from your grandmother. She was a very large woman. I remember you guys were very skinny. So the food wasn't going to you too. Now you're 26.
February, yes, please.
And Lisa and I have known you for about 11 years. I remember I met you when you were in junior high school, I believe.
Yes, please.
Seen you grow up. So we gave you extra support. We give money, we give food at schools, so make sure you got some food. In Ghana, it's very difficult to get into university because you have to be good at every subject. And if your scores aren't strong enough, you're unable to. But once you turn 25, the requirements change. So Solomon and Michael are both in this situation where they had to wait till be 25 to enter university. So last year, when I went to see you, what were you doing?
I was serving as a waitress in one of the chobas around Sogakope.
Yeah, so you were working as a waitress. We put you in an apartment. And now you're at university. So tell us a little about this. Now you're a university student. What are you studying?
Please, I'm studying a program, food and nutrition.
This is your first year there. You just started in January, right?
Yes, please.
So you're studying food and nutrition. You told me that so far, what have you been learning about in terms of food and nutrition and keeping people healthy?
In the food and nutrition, we've been taught how, as a human being, you have to eat, how you need to balance your diet, the calories in the food we take in. For example, as a human being, when you are going to prepare food, you have to know that when you take protein, the protein aspect, the calories must be 4. And when you take carbohydrates too, the calories must be 4. When you take alcohol, the alcohol part of the food must be 7. And fat must be 9. So you have to calculate all this before you take in or before you prepare the food. So you need to know the nutrients needed by the body so that you eat it in its right proportion. And you have to eat moderately. You don't have to overeat or
Right. Like your grandma. Right. Okay. Let's tell them one other story that's just a little off what we've been talking about. When I was there in July, before seeing you working as a waitress in Sagokape, I met you someplace else. Can you tell them where I met you? What big event did we go to?
I went to a restaurant.
So we went to a wedding together, didn't we?
Yeah. July.
Yeah. Who got married?
Elizabeth.
And how do you know Elizabeth?
Elizabeth is my cousin.
Salome was a bridesmaid at the wedding. And I'd love to, if I get a chance, I'll try to find the picture. She was so beautiful at the wedding and so beautiful. And it was so exciting for both of us to be at Elizabeth's wedding. Salome also has a beautiful singing voice, and she sang some songs at the wedding and danced, I think, for like, by the way, the wedding ceremony was 5.5 hours long. And I think Salome,
in case the Jews want to complain about keeping it short.
the wedding ceremony was 5.5 hours long, and I think Salome danced and sang for 5.5 hours. All right, so I'm going to go over to Michael. By the way, this is not Michael's first time attending a Jewish service. Michael came to America and visited me. And Michael came to my synagogue in Caldwell. So Michael's familiar with all these practices. All right, Michael, why don't you tell me a little about your family?
My name is Mikado Michael. I was born in a family of 4. I am the first child of my mother, but death has taken away 2, and he left with I and my younger sister. And I am a 5th child of my father. My father is dead in the year 1998. So because of hardship on part of my mother, she decided to send me to Lake Volta to work. So there I was before breaking the chain came for me.
Your mother had 4 children, but 2 of them died.
Yeah, told them that.
And your dad had 6 children.
Yes.
So your father passed away, and because of the hardship, your mother trafficked you.
Yes.
Okay. So you were sent to Abati Tornu? Is that where you worked?
Yes. Pando Toko.
So tell me about your experience when you were trafficked.
When you've been to someone before, there you realize that there's difference between parent and a master. Indeed, I went through a lot when I was at the Lake Volta. These people treated me anyhow they like because I am not their biological daughter or son. So they treat me anyhow they like. And when we go to the fishing, sometimes they will beat you just to speed up the work you are doing, not because you've done anything wrong, just because they want to speed up the work you are doing. Because they see it really to be like when you don't receive any beating, you slow down the work. So when they beat you, there's kind of speed that you put up in the work. So they maltreat us.
Michael, how did they beat you? Was it with a paddle? Was it with a hand? Was it with a rope?
Both the paddle, the rope, and sometimes they push you into the water, and then they force you to enter the boat by yourself without help.
And how old were you when you started working on the fishing boat?
I was 8 years, Daddy.
You were 8 years old. Did you know how to swim at that point? Because where you grew up is not on the
Not
water.
at all, not at all, Daddy. I went there before I learned it.
So they just threw you in the water and you had to learn to swim?
Yeah. Before they teach you, they will throw you into the water, and when you're about to drown, before they will help you out. But like sometimes they'll just put something on the water like rubber for you to go and then pick it. And when you are doing that, you get to learn it.
So you scooped water out of the boat, you pulled up the fishing nets, you rowed the boat. When you were doing this work, I assume you had to dive in the water and untangle the nets, right?
Yeah, I did.
Why did you have to dive in the water to untangle the nets? What would happen to the nets?
At times, it didn't happen to me anyway, but let me say, I witnessed it. Some people jump into the water, and there's some logs in the water, and jumping into it, sometimes they fall into it, and then they got hurt.
They got hurt.
Yes.
So Lake Volta, where he worked, is a man-made lake. There's the Volta River that was
Yes.
dammed up that formed the lake. So there are trees in the water that they have to untangle the nets from. Can you describe a little what you mean when somebody got hurt? How did they get hurt?
One I've witnessed was that a boy jumped into the water, and then he didn't know that there was a log there. So as he was going into the water, he used his eye to hit one of the log, and then he got an eye injury.
Is that Kojo?
No, not Gojo, but where I stay, a boy was there.
Okay, so yeah. One of the children we cared for had the same thing where they lost an eye by diving in and getting poked out by a stick and still had to go jump in the water the next day. Did you know of any children who drowned?
I know a lot of them, not even the children, but even the older ones. Sometimes they got drowned because the net in the water before they go, and then the standard days can catch them sometimes. And then at times too, there's a fish called electric fish. When they get into water, that fish shocked them sometimes, and then they got drunk in the process.
Oh my gosh. Eventually, IOM came around and you and Christian and Kwame got rescued together, right?
Yes, sir.
One of the other boys that we cared for, Christian, when they went to rescue him, said you have to also rescue Michael and Kwame. So
Yeah.
another child helped them get rescued by pointing them out to the Coast Guard and getting the rescue. So you came back to your home and you were returned to your mother, right?
Yes, Daddy.
And then what happened there? How was your mother's care for you? And does she was remarried by that point?
She was married to another man, And then I came to them, and let me say 2 months later, the organization came back and then enrolled me to school.
Okay, so you enrolled back into school.
Yeah.
And was the care okay by your mother and your stepfather? Did they take good care of you?
I can say they've done their best, but the organization did the most.
I supported IOM, and one of the changes that we made when we started caring for it is we realized they needed additional care and long-term support. You can't just return these children to these broken families without additional support. And that's become the focus of breaking the chain. Now, Michael was very enterprising. And when Michael wasn't at school, he started his own business. So Michael, you want to tell them about the business you started?
I am a standing broom maker anyway. I make this broom and then I sell it at Togo.
So he would make brooms that he would collect the materials for, and then he would go on a motorbike.
Yeah, I use bicycle, not motor.
Oh, bicycle. And
Yes.
he'd ride his bicycle to the next country, Togo, and sell his brooms that he made as a little, to make a little extra money. Michael also, there wasn't enough room for him in his house. So Michael asked our help for another purpose, right, Michael? And what did we build together?
A very big thing to breaking the chain. In the year 2020, let me say the organization gave me an amount of 2,500 to put up a building which I can feel at home and then live as normal human being.
So Michael built his own house there with some help. And he built a home. We helped him with that. Michael, tell them about your experience of coming to America.
Wow. It was very fantastic to experience other countries or other parts of the world. It was my first time being there anywhere, but I sensed the environment. It was very good. It was very nice.
Michael came to school with me. I'm a teacher. He came to my high school. He made some friends there. What was your favorite thing in America?
My first thing was the hockey game.
We went to a hockey game. We got to get
Yeah,
a
we went to the
different
hockey
experience.
game and then
Yeah, I got to tell you, the ice hockey in Ghana is not very good. So you know, that was good. And also with the Museum of Natural History, right?
Yeah, we went to Museum of Natural History and then
Michael, talk to us about what you're doing now. Tell me about a little about what's going on now. What are you doing? What are you up to?
right now I'm in University of Education, Winneba, reading the program Human Resource Management.
So he's now his university studying human resource management, and it shows you the promise that all these children have when given the opportunity and support and what they could achieve. So we are so proud of Michael and Salome, of the people they are, the wonderful people they are, and what they've accomplished. Would you please tell Emmanuel to jump in the video so we could say hi to him as well? Hi, Emmanuel.
Hi, sir.
So Emmanuel is my partner, my friend, and helps me run things in Ghana. He's one of my managers there and is just a wonderful person who takes very good care of Salome and Michael. And we work very closely together. So I wanted to introduce Emmanuel as well.
Wanted to ask about your religious background. Evan mentioned that Ghana is a very religious country. So I wanted to ask our three Ghanaians about that.
Salome, why don't you go first? Because Salome traveled around with her church for a while.
I attend Apostolic Church Ghana, and I sing at church.
Now that you're in Winneba and you're not from your home, do they have a church in Winneba too?
Yes, please. We have the branch here, so I do attend it here.
Okay, good. And Michael, do you go to church too? I went to a Ghanaian church in America with Michael, and he got up there and sang a song too. So
yeah. I belong to New Birth Assembly.
Okay, and do you have a branch in Winneba as well that you attend?
Oh, we don't have it here, but since Christianity is not separated from this thing, so I joined one.
So you joined a different church in Winneba.
Yeah.
You remember the experience of going with Lisa and I to the Ghanaian church in Newark?
Yes, Daddy.
I remember when there was the tradition when Michael went up there and sang and told his story at the Ghanaian church in Newark. People gave him money, which he brought back. And just want to tell you one little story about Michael. People gave him stuff when he was here, and they gave him a lot of clothes. And I remember we had this big bag of clothing, and Michael said, "Oh, I'll give this to my friend here. I'll give this to my other friend." So it was just too much for him to believe he should take for himself, and everything was to be shared with his friends and family back home.
Thank you.
I was recently visiting a relative in Nevada. When we came through the Las Vegas airport, there were signs, big signs on the walls about human trafficking in the United States. So you are working, your organization is working in Ghana, only in Ghana, or in other places in the world as well?
We're small, only in Ghana.
Is there an overall organization that works to end or reduce human trafficking?
There are many organizations working on it, but there is not one overall branch. In Ghana, the various organizations that work on human trafficking work with International Justice Mission, who started a coalition of organizations that we are part of to work together. So there are about 25 organizations in Ghana that meet at the IJM office in Accra, and Emmanuel is a part of that. So is Dixon, my two managers in Ghana. So we do coordinate with other organizations.
You mentioned IOM, which I had to look up, International Organization of Migration. You work with them?
No, I used to. They're now part of the United Nations. The cost factor of working with these organizations was very inefficient. And since that time, we've opened our own office, and we have our own staff like Emmanuel, and it works much better. That we now visit all our beneficiaries every 2 weeks. We have much greater care, and we're able to do a better job on our own than we did when we worked through the organizations. But it took time for me to feel comfortable for us to feel comfortable to open our own office. But since doing so about 5 years ago, it's been amazing. And the level of care they've received, I'm sure Michael and Salome can talk about that, increased greatly since we broke off on our own.
Thank you.
I'll just add to that, Carolyn. It's such a huge problem, and there are many organizations working on their own, but also increasingly in coordination. There's an umbrella group called ATTEST, ATTEST. It's an acronym that I don't recall the individual letters for, but one of the T's is trafficking and one of the T's is slavery, and it's all the non-governmental organizations in the world that are working to end human trafficking. For people in the United States who are trafficked, there are some organizations that work specifically on that, like Polaris is one that's a very well-known one and very well respected. I've been part of something called the Freedom from Slavery Coalition, which is every 2 years, all the different organizations around the world that work on ending human trafficking send representatives to Stanford University, where Stanford hosts this event to try to get people to coordinate and to use resources efficiently. One of the reasons why there are so many smaller organizations is because sometimes there are sort of microclimates for entrapment and enslavement, and the issues are different in different places, and what people need is different. There's very specific problems, for example, on Lake Volta in Ghana, that unfortunately 4 people here are experts on our Zoom screen. But there are many, many good organizations to be supported doing good work, and Evans is definitely one of them.
Are any Ghanaians trafficked over into the Middle East?
It seems to be, from what I've seen, I can't say any, but from what I've seen, it's more to neighboring countries. We have some into Cote d'Ivoire or Ivory Coast. So I've seen more local. I'm not aware of international trafficking by plane, but it's more been that I'm aware of. But again, I'm very micro focused on the children from Lake Volta and providing long-term care for them. We do sponsorship programs where people could support individual children, and we care for about 130 children or beneficiaries, young men and women too, as you could see from Michael and Salome. But we're very focused on our beneficiaries and how to help them be successful, like Michael and Salome are, more than the global or bigger issues. We're very micro.
When you say they were rescued, what exactly is how is a rescue? How does that happen? I mean, presumably the masters don't want to just let go of the kids.
Each one is a little different, or organizations use different strategies. In Michael's situation, I believe the Coast Guard was involved, right? As well
Yes.
as International Organization for Migration. So it was done with some level of law enforcement. Salome, do you know how your rescue was arranged?
I think they came around in their houses. They came around.
They came to the houses, and
Yeah.
so when I was working with IOM and we were doing this, in one village, we built a school for the village, and they released 20 children. Other times they would work with the masters to help them with other resources so they wouldn't need to use child labor. International Justice Mission works with the local police. There are different scenarios for different rescues, but I don't have one answer for that. I've seen it in different ways.
Well, thank you.
I did go on a rescue mission in 2010, and we did persuade some fishermen to let them go based on it just being wrong. So they're very unique, each situation.
And I just want to add, many of the masters were themselves enslaved as children. And the reason they do this is because they have no other option. They have no education, and it's the only life they know. But on some level, they realize that it's wrong because they've been victimized.
Is slavery illegal in Ghana?
Yes, it is. But enforcement, police officers don't usually have cars or boats to enforce the law. So poverty is the cause of all trafficking in Ghana. It's almost all based on extreme poverty. And then the poverty extends to the police force without the resources to really fight something that is on the books illegal.
Thank you.
The saying from Free the Slaves, another organization I've worked with, is that slavery is illegal everywhere and also practiced everywhere. There is no country, sadly, free of slavery. Not the United States, as Carolyn pointed out, not Israel, unfortunately. There have been cases of trafficking absolutely everywhere. Just to give you a sense of the scale, 41 million people now enslaved, about 25% of them under the age of 18, 14 million enslaved people in India alone. We're going to turn now to our Torah service. Vayivin Zoharon Vayomer Moshe Puma Adonai V'yafutzu Oivecha V'yanusu Misanecha Mipanecha Ki B'tzion Tetzei Torah Ki B'tzion Tetzei Torah U'devar Adonai Mi'Yerushalayim Baruch Shenatan Torah Baruch Shenatan Torah Le'amo Yisrael B'kedushato Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
And again, please repeat after me. Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo.
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonai, Kadosh Shemo.
Gadlu Ladonai iti uneram Shemo Yachdav. Wally, you're honored with the first Aliyah. Would you please unmute and share your Hebrew name?
Ze'ev Ari Ben Yisrael.
And do you remember your mom's Hebrew name?
Yes, Mina Bas Aaron HaKohen.
Ooh, some yichus there. Okay. La Aliyah Rishona.
Hu es Adonai HaMorach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMorach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Olam Asher Bochabonu Mikol Ha'amim V'nosan Lanu Es Toraso Baruch Atah Adonai Nosein HaTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Medaber Adonai el Moshe Lemor. God spoke to Moses, saying, Tzav et Aaron v'et banav Lemor. Command to Aaron and to all his descendants, saying, So Torah Ta'olah, this is the Torah of the Olah sacrifice. Torah meaning instruction, but also there is Torah in everything. Find the holy wisdom, the life guidance in this Olah sacrifice. The word Olah is like the word Aliyah. It means to rise up because it was completely burnt up on the altar and the smoke would rise up to the heavens. So sometimes Olah is translated as burnt offering or whole offering or ascension offering. Hi haolah mokta al mizbeach kol halayla ad haboker ve'esh al mizbeach tukad bo. And this is the offering that ascends on high. And you keep it on the altar all night. Let it burn until the morning. And don't let the fire go out on the altar. This is an analogy for many other things. It becomes one of the sources for our eternal light in the temple. Don't let the fire of hope go out in your heart, no matter how difficult the circumstances. Don't let the flame of the Pintelayid, don't let that ember flame of your Jewishness be extinguished, but fan the flame. V'lavash hakohen midovad michnasei vad yilbash al b'saro. And the priest should wear fine clothing of white linen and take away the ash and lift it up and transform it from something that is just dirty and dusty and residual to something that is acknowledged as a holy part of the sacrificial experience. Asher tochal ha'esh et ha'olah al mizbeach v'samo eitzel ha'mizbeach. You take out the ash, but you don't just deposit it willy-nilly. You put it next to, and the Talmud says on the east side of the altar. So you take this residue of experience, and there's no completely just banishing it, but you go to the innermost part of those ashes and you sweep them out and put them to the side. That's what we do with past tragic experiences. You don't get over it, perhaps, but you get through it, and it never leaves you, but you can put it to the side, and you can build up a new flame with fresh wood. ופשט את בגדיו ולבש בגדים אחרים, והוציא את הדשן אל מחוץ למחנה, אל מקום טהור. And after sweeping out these ashes, the high priest would then change clothes again, because by now the clothes, the white linens, would be dirty, and take these linens and this ash to outside the camp. Sometimes you have to really remove ash, old experience, and residue far from you, but you take it to a pure place where you examine it. If you're in a difficult place, like the home of one of your past traffickers, where you're not getting enough food, you can't do the healing there. You may have to go further afield. You may have to take it to a holy and new place, a place like Evan and Lisa have built. And there you can take those ashes and put them outside the camp, outside the daily awareness of your experience. But don't think that because there was ash there, you can't build a new fire. In fact, the truth is the flame never went out, and it is forbidden in the Bible for the flame to go out. Uvier aleha kohen etzim baboker baboker, because each and every morning the priest comes and adds wood to the altar. Verach aleha halav v'tir aleha chalvei hashlamim, and over this fresh wood that the religious leader puts, on top of that is the fat that will be used for the shlamim well-being offering. So whatever your experience has been, there is a helper, a priest, a rabbi, a non-governmental organization, a helper of some kind who will assist in adding wood. You don't have to get the firewood yourself. And when that fuel is given to you, the layer that you add is this layer of wholeness. Find some point of well-being, find some point of gratitude. That is the point of the shlamim. And it burns up with a sweet smell because it smells like the fat of a delicious barbecue. You should have this fire burning with a combination of daily practice and burning and giving things up to God, and your layer added on top of your own gratitude, together with the help that is planted to help your fires burn. May the flame never go out. That is the biblical promise for each of us and all of us together. Don't let the fire go out. Keep stoking.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech asher nosan lono Torah emes v'chayei olam notah b'tzolkenu. Baruch atah Adonai nosein haTorah.
Amen. Carolyn, will you share with us your Hebrew name?
Itzel Rachel bat Leachana v'Aaron Shachne.
La Aliyah Hashaniah.
Baruch hu et Adonai Hamborach.
Baruch Adonai Ambarach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamborach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. V'zot Torat HaMincha, and this is the Torah of the Mincha offering, the offering of food that the priests themselves ate. Hakrevot b'nei Aaron lifnei Adonai al pnei hamizbeach, and Aaron and Aaron's descendants would bring it before God to the very altar. והרימנו בקומצו מסולת המנחה ומשמנה ואת כל עוונה אשר על מנחה והקטיר על המזבח ריח ניחוח אזכרתה לאדוני. And they would take and lift up a part of it from the grain and its oils, and from the frankincense that was put on top of the grain for this mincha offering. And they would burn up a small part of it as karata, as a remembrance and as a token gift to God. Have you ever looked at a kosher product and it says the words challah was taken, and you say to yourself, taken from where? This is an antecedent for that practice. This was the food that would feed not just the priest, but also the priest's family, the mincha offering. But he didn't eat all of it. Some of it was burnt up as an offering to God, so that that smell of the delicious toasting bread and grain together with the frankincense would be a kind of gift back to God, because all the food that we have, all the freedom that we have, everything that we have is a gift from God. And when you take a small part of it and you give it up, you give it to another, sharing your bread and your freedom, or you give it to God as a sacrifice, that's a way of acknowledgement that all this is a gift. And the rest, the vast majority, is what Aaron and Aaron's children will eat. Matzot ta'achel b'makom kadosh b'chatzer o moed yochluha. They would eat matzahs as their regular meal in the courtyard of the tent of meeting. It was rare to have puffy bread as part of a sacrifice, for the same reason that we don't like to eat puffy bread on a regular Passover, because puffiness tends to mean arrogance or something that has been fermented and gotten old. And the whole point of our first reading was that you sweep out the old ash, you get rid of mentally and spiritually the difficulties and the puffery and the fermentation that came before. Lo ta'afer chametz chelkam natna otaha me'ishai kodesh kodashim hi kachatat v'cha asham. So just as when you would give a serious sacrifice for an accidental or a possible sin, so too in this case, you only use what is not leavened. You don't have chametz, the leaven. You only use effectively matzah. Kol zachar b'vnei Aaron yochana chok olam l'dorot techem mishay Adonai kol asher yiga bahem yikdash. This is true for all the descendants who will be priests in Aaron's line, like we heard about before, that Wally's mother was the daughter of a Kohen. Those would be the lines that would eat this item, because the Kohen doesn't have another day job. They don't do farming. They're working in the temple, and everyone needs and deserves to have sufficient food. This is a rule for all generations, not just the specifics of how you will do the frankincense and what you will mix, but the larger principles that everyone must have food, and every person has a holy role to fulfill. And no one should have the puffery or the arrogance to think that they own another person. And everyone who would touch any of this sacred food that had been set aside for the priests, Yikdash, would acknowledge it as something set aside for a particular use. And that's how we get the word kadosh. Kadosh means holy because it was set aside for a special use in the temple. Each and every human being was set aside by God for a very special purpose. All are holy unto God.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'hayei lolam naten b'tuchenu. Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah.
Amen. And now our third aliyah for Evan and Lisa.
Chaya Sarah, Bat Chana V'Moshe. And Evans is Ephraim ben Belareza V'Aharon.
Beautiful.
Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamvarach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Me'olam Va'ed.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam.
Asher Bachar
Banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. B'zo Torah zevach hashlamim asher hikriv Adonai. This is the Torah, the instruction, the wisdom for giving the shalamim, the peace and the wholeness and the well-being sacrifice. And here is a subset for that wholeness and well-being sacrifice. It's called the Todah, the thanksgiving offering. In Todah yakrivenu v'ikriv al zevach hatodah chalot matzot belulot bashemen urikikei matzot meshuchim bashemen v'solet murbechet chalot belulot bashemen al chalot lechem chametz yakriv korbanot zevach todat shilamav. So for this special Thanksgiving offering, in case you crossed a sea or a desert, or went from illness to health, or from slavery to freedom, then you shall bring various forms of matzah, whole loaves, and also rikikei matzot, what we might call farfel today, pieces of matzah soaked in oil and added with spices to make them a delicious food. And you should also give chametz in this rare case. This is one of those times where you also bring challah, regular bread, for a sacrifice. And the Talmud tells us this was no small amount, but people would bring 40 or 30 loaves. And the rule was for a regular shlamim wellness, whole being, good occasion, thank you God sacrifice, that you would have 2 days in which to eat it all. But for the Todah, which had even more food, if you emerged from danger and were safe, then you had even more food and only 1 day to eat it. And the question is, why? We don't want to make people sick with overeating. Salome already told us from her studies of nutrition that it's not good to overeat. And the answer is, you have to invite guests. It is designed so one person couldn't possibly eat it all. And this is also why we have a large Paschal lamb for our Seder in the Torah, because it's designed to be shared. Because when you have guests, you can tell your story, you can tell your triumph, you can give credit to God, you can be celebrated by community who will come in and tell you what you have traversed and accomplished and survived is nothing short of miraculous. We admire you, we love you, we will sit and break bread and celebrate with you. V'hikriv mimenu echad bin hakorban tiruma ladonai lakohen hazarek et adam hashlamim lo yeh. And when you give this todah, this thanksgiving offering for having survived and having come out the other side whole again, then you should give a portion to your priest. In this case, I would name the priests as Evan and Lisa, giving back a portion of your success to their credit, sharing and breaking bread specifically with them. Uv'sar zevach todat hashlamim b'yom korbano yeachel v'yaniach mimenu ad boker. And here comes the instruction that I mentioned before. For an offering of thanksgiving, you may not let it rest overnight. All must be eaten and consumed in a day. This is to make sure that you don't let the day go by and say, I'm busy today, I'll celebrate tomorrow. This is to make sure that you have witnesses and people who will celebrate with you. Salome and Michael and all of Evan and Lisa's kids, may you offer this sacrifice of thanksgiving because truly you have come to the other side. May you share it with your high priests, Evan and Lisa, and may we be privileged to witness with you.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu torat emet v'chayeu lanata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. I want to share as a final blessing today something important from our service. This is the Gomel blessing. It comes from this Korban Todah that we read about. And in the Talmud, it talks about the fact that God took them out of darkness, out of the shadow of death, broke their bonds asunder. And took them out refers, of course, to our exodus from Egypt, but also to the ongoing work of removing and taking out everyone who is enslaved today. And of course, not just ending there, but as Evan and Lisa do, helping them to have a life of freedom and purpose. And then in the Psalm where this proof text appears, it adds, Yodu l'Adonai chasto v'niflotav livnei adam. Let us acknowledge, praise, and thank God for the divine steadfast love, for God's wondrous deeds for human beings. And the Psalm continues, for God shattered gates of bronze and broke their iron bars. So this is the blessing. And if you choose to, Salome and Michael, you could say it with me, or you don't have to. It's the second paragraph on your screen. We're just going to do the English today. Blessed are you, Adonai, sovereign of all time and space, who graciously bestows favor even when we haven't earned grace, and who has been gracious to me. May the one who has been good and gracious to you this time be good and gracious to you all times. Amen. Selah. We have other prayers that we could end with, but I can't think of anything better than the Gomel blessing to end today. And there is this short poem I wanted to offer for Evan and Lisa. And the title of the poem is Gomel, after the blessing that we just recited. When you traverse a sea, when you traverse a desert, when you traverse and come to the other side of illness or of slavery. The Israelites walked into the Reed Sea 1 foot at a time. What were they thinking about as the water rose up their legs, chilling their hearts, advancing towards their open mouths? We continue to walk here now, 1 foot at a time. On our better days, forward. Alone, I cannot reach the far shore without drowning. Somehow I don't go under. The person to my right holds me up. Something I cannot see holds him up. Blessed is the source of help, so often unexpected. I step forward. The sea is vast. There is one last prayer we need to do, and that is a mourner's Kaddish. I want to make mention of the yard sites of this week, first of all, and they are Ayala Ryback, mother of Chaim Ryback, Arthur Saul Kaplan, who's connected to Carolyn Ginsberg, who's with us, Marilyn Altfield, who's connected to Linda Rosengard, Harry Beldner, Estelle Brenner, Leah Perlmutter, Harold Stegman, father of Linda Spatz, Selena Schoenfeld, who's connected to Bernard and Judy, Adolf Herschel, who's connected to Ruth Herschel, Louis and Fanny Simkis, who are remembered by the entire Simkis family, Max Weitzman, who's connected to Ruth Bressler, Morris Heimovich, who's connected to Marilyn Hyman, Janice Getz, who's connected to Roberta Simon, and Rose Sprecher, who's connected to Roberta. I also want to mention the recent passings of three beloved mothers, the mother of Fred Pierce, the mother of Michael Wax, and the mother of Leslie Brunel. We're still remembering our member, Barbara Glick, who passed recently. I would like to add to our list of people that we're remembering now, all the children that Michael and Evan mentioned who died on fishing boats on Lake Volta in Ghana. May there be no more of them. Itgadal, v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, ve'alma divra kirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon v'yamechon uv'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, b'gala uv'izman kari v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mebarach le'olam le'omei omayam. Yitbarach, v'yishtabach, v'yitba'ar, v'yitramam, v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar, v'yitaleh, v'yitalal, shemei d'kudeshav v'yichucho. Leila min kol birchata v'shivata, tushbachata v'nechemata, da'amiman be'alma v'imru, amen.
Amen.
Yehei shlama rabba min shemai v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru, amen.
Amen.
Oseh shalom b'mromav. Hu yaseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru, amen.
Amen.
Thank you, everyone.
I was wondering how far you are from the village that you came from, and are you still in touch with any of your family members?
It's about a 4 to 5 hour drive from where the university is to their hometown.
I do call my mom and I hear from her.
So yeah, Michael lives, the home we built with Michael is close to where his family is, and Michael is in close touch. Salome, which relatives of yours are you in touch with?
My auntie, one of my aunties.
Yeah, so some of her aunts, her parents, she's not aware of. Her grandmother passed away, but she is in touch with aunts, and her cousin, whose wedding we went to, and
Wedding,
a relative.
And you mentioned your sister, Salome. Do you see them or no?
The elder one, I don't see it, but the second one, I do see it once a while.
By the way, Michael came to America in order to speak at our dinner, our annual fundraising dinner. So which is the reason Michael came to America, just to clarify that before.
I know many people are going to have the question of how they can support your work, Evan, and we have that in our Shul Shmooze. The link to how you can donate is there. I also, if anybody looked at this week's Jewish Standard, there's an article in there that also where I wrote about Evan and Lisa. So that also has the information about how you can donate and how you can support.
We do have the Support a Child where you could support an individual of one of our beneficiaries. Just to show you, if I just make one note mention, we've just graduated about 20 children this year, and they are now electricians, plumbers, etc. Last month took on 15 new beneficiaries, and Emmanuel was just visiting some beneficiaries this week and visited 14 new ones that we'll be taking on in the central region. Michael and Salome before mentioned that they're in Winneba, which is a different culture than the place that they're from. Different regions have different tribes that they're from. Michael, I know, is Ewe, Salome.
Yeah, and Dangme.
So, and now they're in Winneba, which is different. So there are many different tribes in Ghana that were obviously thrown together under imperialism and put together as one country. Part of our service is in Hebrew here, but one of the things that always impress Lisa and I when we're in Ghana is the number of languages people speak there. It's just part of the culture that people speak 3-4 languages or more.
In addition to English.
Salome and Michael, your English is very, very impressive.
Thank you.
Michael, what other languages do you speak besides English and Ewe?
I speak three. Ada, Nigo.
So that's 5 languages.
And Salome, what about you?
And I can speak Ewe, Tree. That's all.
What about you?
Um,
And Dangme.
Michael, do you speak any French?
French. Oh, one.
Okay, so some French. Okay, so yeah. So as you can see how multilingual people are over there.
When did you learn English?
When I start school.
Yes, Daddy, when I started school.
Did you start school before you were trafficked, or was it all after that you were trafficked?
After I was trafficked.
And after you were rescued? Okay, Michael, you too?
I was in primary 3 before I left for Lake Volta.
You were in primary 2?
Yes.
So they were in 2nd grade. Michael and Salome really didn't attend school until after she was. How many years were you trafficked for, Michael?
The interval of 4 years.
And Salome?
3 years.
Okay. So they lost 3 and 4 years, but now they're still in university. So what they've been able to overcome is very impressive. So proud of both of them.
You mentioned there are 41 million people involved in human slavery today and modern day slavery. And I remember when you first introduced this subject, maybe around 10 years ago, I thought I remember you saying 27 million people. And I'm wondering, has it increased that much since, or do they count it differently? What's going on with that?
It's a good question. Both are true. It has increased in raw numbers, but also the difference is it used to be that when somebody was forced into marriage at age 12 or 13, that was not counted as slavery. But now it is by the international organizations. So when you add in forced marriage as a form of slavery, it increases the numbers dramatically.
I mean, one of the problems that they do have in Ghana is that some of these families are incredibly large and there is polygamy. So a man might have 3-4 wives, and one of our beneficiaries, his father had 25 children and then had trafficked a lot of them. So some of it does come from the number of marriages and the number of children.
I'm familiar with an organization in Haiti that also rescues children from child slavery there. In addition, they prevent kids from getting in. Some kids they prevent from getting into slavery in the first place through financial arrangements or other arrangements that they're able to make personally. Does that happen with your organization as well sometimes?
No, there are other organizations that are focused on that aspect of it. Our focus is long-term support to give these children who lost years of their life a chance for a better future. So we are strictly focused on the long-term support for children who had been trafficked. But there are other programs from other organizations that do focus on that.
I want to thank you all so much.
Okay, thank you very much.
Shabbat Shalom. It may be a festival of freedom for everyone.
Thank you so
Shabbat shalom.
very much.
Toda rabah.